Hey everybody, welcome back. So in the previous video we were looking at default parameters in ECMAScript 6. In this video we're going just to spend a little bit of time looking at REST parameters. And you're probably wondering, okay, that's an interesting name. Does it sound like an API call to a REST endpoint? No, this is something completely different to that. So basically what REST parameters are is essentially extra parameters that you can pass to a function that can be variable in length. Okay, so for example, if you have a function that by default requires 2 parameters, but then optionally you can have more than that, so you're starting to look at an array of parameters, then you would use this REST syntax to provide that extra array of parameters. The best way to demonstrate this is to actually look at it. Okay, so I'm going to jump over to the code very quickly, and I'm going to demonstrate a very simple example. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function at the top here, and I'm just going to call it REST parameter function. Alright, like so. And basically I'm going to have an A and a B. And what I'll do is I'll make B equal to 2 by default at this point, right? I'm going to call this down here, so I'll just go REST parameters function, and we'll pass in 1, 3, and then we'll pass in a 5. Okay, we'll pass in 3 arguments, like so, and we'll save, right? Now, if I wanted to get this argument here in the past, right, we only had A and B here. So you're like, oh, okay, so if I come in, I'm not going to be able to go console.log A, which will get 1, console.log B, which in my case will get me 3, but how do I get that third one? And you go, what? Like that. And so there was another way to get it, and that was to go arguments, and you would go, okay, I'm after the second index, so the third parameter, alright? If the third parameter was passed in. If it wasn't, then this would not have 3 items in it, and this would actually crash. But for the purpose of this example, if I run this code, we should get the value 5 here. So I'll go node, what did I call it? REST parameters. And there you go. So I've got the 1 which is bound to A, I've got the 3 which is bound to B, and then I didn't have anything else to bind to, so I had to look in the arguments list. Now this arguments list was really designed for, you know, if you have a function with no parameters in it, but you don't really want to restrict the number of parameters you can pass to a method, and you just want to process it through this arguments collection. That's how you used to do it with JavaScript, and you can still do it that way. However, what they've brought into ECMAScript 6 is this context of a REST parameter, and it looks something like this. Oops. It looks something like this. So I go comma, dot, 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 and then the name of a parameter which will contain the rest of the parameters after the first 2 parameters have been defined. So I'm just going to call it the rest, like so. Now inside of this will only contain the number of parameters after the first 2, unlike the arguments list, which contains all 3. Alright, so 1 will be bound to A here, 3 will be bound to B, and then 5 will be the first position in this REST array. Essentially, it's an array. Okay, so just to give you an idea, I'm going to console.log out the rest at 0. Right? Now, if I run this, you should get 5 for the last 2. And we do, right? So a slight distinction there in the way that things work, but all the same, it still operates that way. Now, the other thing you can do here too, if you really don't want to use the arguments collection anymore, is you can be tricky and you can do this. So I can remove that, and I can remove that, and now I don't need that. And we can pre-add all three still using the rest, right? So what's happened now is we've said any parameters that come into this function, I want you to capture them inside this rest parameter, okay, which is an array. So now this should pick up 1, this should pick up 3, and this should pick up 5. So this should work as intended before. So if I run this, and I go return, you'll see that now we have 1, 3, and 5 still. Okay, so it's just a slight little difference there. It just makes it a little bit more readable that you're after more than potentially the 2 or 1 or 0 default parameters, whatever it is. It's just to give it intention and to capture those things in a consistent manner by putting them in an array. So that's REST parameters at a very simple level. Now, just a couple of extra things that I want to bring up in regards to those. The one thing you can do is you can still use them in dynamic functions. So, as I mentioned in the previous video, we can create a dynamic function down here, and we can go equals new function, and inside of here we can go, we'll go A, and then we'll go B, and then you can use the rest, right? And then as part of the output, I'll just put console.log, and we'll say the rest at 0, right? So I'm going to make sure that I always pass 3 parameters into this function, just to show this as a demonstration. So now I can come in here and I can create the same thing with 135 again, and we should get the value 5, because that's the third parameter in the list. So this should still work. And then you go. You got 135, and then that second example has 5, right? Which is what we were intending. The other thing we need to think about when we're talking about these REST-based arguments is that they do not work for setters when trying to define a setter for an object. So if I was to come down here and go var, and we'll go some object is equal to, we'll go literal, then we go set, name, and normally we have a value here, and then we go console.log, name is, and then name, right? So this is how you create setters. We've seen this already in previous videos. So we'll just quickly make sure that if I come in and go some object dot name is equal to, we'll say Daryl, right? So if I run this code, I jump over, name is not defined. Oh yeah, it's supposed to be value. My bad. So it's got name is Daryl, right? So that's all good. Whoops, capitals. But some people might be inclined to think, I want to pass in multiple values to a setter, in one of my objects. So they do something like that, right? And then they might go, I want to get the first value and put that there, right? And you think, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. And then maybe down here, you think, well, this is a list of values or an array of values. I'm just deciding one value at the moment, so it should be okay with it. But to your surprise, it won't let you do this. It says set a function argument must not be a REST parameter. So it's just letting you know that you cannot do this form of action. Now, the very last thing that you can see in regards to REST parameters and functions is that you can actually tell the length of the parameters or the number of REST parameters in the function. So, for example, if I come down here and I go console.log and I go REST parameter function dot length, alright, you're probably like, what the hell? A function has a length now? Yeah, it's based on this thing here, right? So if I come down and I save that and I run it, I forgot to get rid of this part. In fact, I'll comment out that whole section there. If I now clear the screen, run it again, you'll see you've got 0 at the moment because we have no parameters. But if I put in A, like so, alright, and then go the rest, so to which now I have to put in another argument here, just to suffice these argument lists here. You'll now get a length of 1 because it looks for everything that isn't part of the rest. So let's just check that, and there you go. Alright, so it's picked up the arguments that are defined by default and aren't part of this rest array. So that's it, everybody. I'm going to end the video here. In the next video, we're going to look into the spread syntax. So I'll see you then.